Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Man Sports Fan Podcast. I am your host, Philip Arthur Schultz, and I am with Chris Slim Smitty Smith and Brian James Fremming. How are you guys?
Can't complain.
Beautiful, besides my name being James.
Well, we'll find out the real name later. We don't need to get there yet.
No,
Hey, happy to be back. It's been a great week. A lot of things to talk about. Football, Packers defensive coordinator. Before we get to it, for you guys, what happened this week for you that was different or interesting?
What do you got, Smitty?
I am not shit. Feels like
Right. It's a good question. I went golfing this weekend. So there's this new golfing place in DeForest called Pin Seekers. It's like a Top Golf type deal. And been a few times. It's a good time. Actually getting better at my golf swing. Like I could never hit it 200 yards. Now I can top out at like 215. So that's my claim to fame for the week.
it's a big
Glad
deal.
you brought up recreation. I got new basketball shoes, Chris. That was my highlight of the week. Some Dala basketball shoes for the great Damian Lillard. So they're cayenne blue. You know what kind of blue that is. So.
I just took it the spice, but I didn't know it was a color. That's cool. Some guy told me about this random thing. It's called the 1001 albums, where some dude put out, here are the 1001 albums you need to listen to in your life. And they send you a new one every day that you listen to all the way through. And you can like rate it, and there's like a Reddit page associated with it. It's been awesome. Because I feel like I just listen to individual songs. I've like rarely listened to an album all the way through. Anyway, check it out. I think it's called 1000.
Anything noteworthy yet?
I listened to Tears for Fears. Red Hot Chili Peppers. Is it Blood, Sex, Magic? Something. It's a really good album. I mean, I feel like I like know some of these songs, but then listen to the album all the way through. It just gives you like a different appreciation of it. It's actually like really cool.
It's kind of like the trend with bands now. Like they're doing a lot of reunion tours where they're playing like full albums. It's kind of a cool thing. I'm into it.
That's what the Postal Service did.
Yeah, I'm going to see them in May. Can't wait.
It's so awesome. Where at?
In Milwaukee.
I'm on the jealous train. I have to join you, Chris.
Yeah, you can always join in, Frem.
Joe, I'm actually jelly because I don't think I actually can join. But you could, Frem.
I could.
Could be your destiny.
Put my stamp on.
Yeah. Well, that sounds awesome. Let's jump into it. Just a couple hours ago, the Packers, it was announced their new defensive coordinator, and we all saw it coming. This guy named Jeff Hafley. Jeff Hafley. So, yeah, this name was never brought up to anybody if you were following their search. It totally came out of nowhere. Just to kind of give you his resume, just really, really briefly. He was in the college ranks pretty much from 2001 through 2011, where he was a defensive backs coach his last two stops with Pittsburgh and Rutgers, where he coached guys like who's the Patriots dude? The really good Patriots safety, Devin McCourty. And then he went to the NFL. He's with the Bucks for 2 years, working in their secondary. Then went to the Browns for 2 years and working in their secondary. And then he went to the 49ers, where he was in their secondary for a couple years. Went to Ohio State, where he was a co-defensive coordinator. Had put up really good numbers there, and then was hired the next year to be Boston College's head coach for the next 3-4 years. And he abruptly leaves Boston College to come to Titletown as their defensive coordinator. So, when you guys heard the news, what did you think? What was your reaction?
jump right out there and say a very typical Packer signing. I think I said it in our last pod. I expected them to go with a lesser known entity in the field. Did not expect us to reel in a big fish at all. So this is kind of more of the same, I would say, for Titletown. My gut reaction is I think he's one and done. In all honesty, I think unless we really support him in his first year, and I think bring in some bigger name players. I wanted to call him Halfley. I think he's only halfly the issue. I think we need to bring in some pretty big name free agent signings here to support this squad. That's probably going to lose some pieces, at linebacker and in our secondary. And so, yeah, my gut reaction is unless we can really bring in some key pieces for him, I think it's a one and done. Kind of vibes of Adrian Griffin, the Bucks coach just fired now. Kind of some vibes of that. We're giving a guy a chance. And a really, I think, a big moment of our franchise's history, especially after this last season. I think expectations are going to be pretty high. I don't know how you can't have expectations after how we ended this last season. So, unless he really produces, and unless we can really support him his first year, I don't know if he lasts. That's my bold take on it.
Yeah, it sounds like him and LaFleur are pretty good buds, which I'm assuming plays into this hire. I mean, it's hard for me to truly have an opinion on him. I think the Ohio State nugget is noteworthy, but he was known as a really good recruiter. I don't know how that translates. Obviously, he brought in guys and was able to develop them, so that's good. I still think the issues go beyond the defensive coordinator. I don't think anyone we would have brought in, even the guys we named last week, is going to move the needle to a degree that's going to make a significant difference right off the bat. But I think LaFleur is kind of sticking his neck out with this one and trusting someone he knows, which I'm fine with. But I feel like defensively, like from a talent perspective and just playing up to their ability, like that's the first step with this hire. So if he can do that and really get guys to buy into what he wants to do, it might be okay.
If you look at the way he looks, he kind of looks like a cross between Kyle Shanahan, Matt LaFleur, and Sean McVay, all mixed into one. So that doesn't mean anything, but it's something to worth look at when you go look at his picture. Anyway, I don't really know what to think. It feels like it's so hard to kind of know what a coordinator can do until they're in it. And I was talking with Chris before, and it's like if he was like the Ravens, DB's, coach, then we would kind of know like, oh, we know what the Ravens defense looks like, and we maybe even know what their secondary looks like. So maybe we could see that translate in some way. But since he's been at Boston College for 3-4 years, I just don't feel like we can really know. It's funny, you hear, you hear Richard Sherman, Dan Orlovsky, read these other, kind of talking heads, and they really seem to like him. I mean, they think he's going to be a lot more aggressive. They think he's like a really good defensive mind. You go to the Boston College SB Nation page and you look at kind of their thoughts on him leaving, and they're like, yeah, we don't want that guy. Like, we're really glad he left. And I think it's just hard to know because I think some coordinators aren't meant to be head coaches. And obviously at Boston College, you're not just coaching, you're also recruiting, you're re-recruiting, NIL, all this stuff at the landscape now. And so it feels like, yeah, did he just want to leave that, because it's obviously a head case and the NCAA doesn't know what they're doing. So it's like, it's so hard to kind of know. I think the 1 year prediction's bold considering how Packers seem to hold on too long to guys. And yet, could it go bad? Yeah, it could. We'll kind of get into free agent draft stuff, but coming weeks. But yeah, it just feels like they're going to need to bring in some reinforcements, especially in the secondary, because it's definitely been, I feel like, a weakness the last 3, 4, 5 years, or at least there's been a part of it that's been weak.
I find it interesting that he's never been a true D coordinator. Like he was that co-D coordinator at Ohio State. I don't know what that means, and I don't know who he's splitting with. I didn't look that up, but it's just, I mean, obviously being a head coach matters, but as I said in I think one of our group texts this week, does it really matter? Like that translation doesn't necessarily mean anything to me. To me, it's like his focus is now solely on the defensive side of the ball. We'll see if he can do it. It's hard to know.
I think if you look at the state of the NFC, people are talking about this is our championship window right now. You're going to have to sign Love here for over $50 million a year, probably in the offseason here. You're going to have a lot of lesser paid, sophomores or rookies on this team coming up. The offensive side of the ball, I think of our receiving core, for example, a lot of lesser paid guys right there. You're going to have to probably bring in some bigger defensive free agents to be competitive here. And I think people expect us to win now. I think you look around the NFC and a lot of other teams are kind of on some shaky ground. I think after, especially watching this last NFC Championship game, which I think we'll get into in a bit here, we should have been in the Super Bowl. I think I'll just say that. We clearly we're playing hot at the right time and really came up short in a really unfortunate way in that second half against San Fran. But I think a lot of people are expecting NFC Championship, Super Bowl, or bust next year even. I know that may sound bold, but I think this is a window Green Bay has right now to really capitalize. And I don't think people are looking at Jordan Love as he only has one full year under his belt. I mean, I think people are looking at him as he's in his prime right now, and this is when we need to strike. This is when we need to go for it. Much like Rodgers did early in his career with Green Bay and winning a Lombardi Trophy. So I think that's where I don't see us holding on to him that long. And yeah, like you said, Chris, the track record, not being a really defensive coordinator. I think you said also, Chris, buy-in. Going to the college game to hear, I think exactly what you said, Phil, too. I read the same piece about wanting to get away from the NIL, really getting sick of having to be a recruiter and fundraiser. And I'm curious why came to Green Bay. I think to your point, Chris, if it's a LaFleur deal and he feels loyalty or he just wants to, maybe it's both things. I just question if he can really get NFL players to buy in to what he's doing. And then I really kind of question his motive for being there in the first place.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, at least he's been in the NFL. And he's worked at DBs, and it seems like he's had success with DBs. So that's, I don't know. I mean, it's just, again, it's so to left field. Nobody saw this coming. It wasn't reported that they had been talking. Some dude a couple of days ago was like, "Oh yeah, Christian Harris is in Green Bay, getting an offer. He's currently the Denver Broncos secondary coach." And yeah, that obviously turned out to be wrong, or that it wasn't by one of these top beat reporters with the Green Bay Packers, but. Yeah, it should be interesting. Again, hard to exactly know what to expect. I just go back to in good I trust. I do trust LaFleur, but it's so hard because I feel like there's a lot of nepotism in the NFL. And then I think everybody goes back to that just because they're friends. But I feel like a lot of these dudes are friends. So it's just kind of hard to know exactly what to make of it. I actually thought they were going to get somebody from the Ravens, whether it's Chris Orr, or eventually, interview Anthony Weaver. But I think once Mike McDonald got hired today by Seattle, I think they'll probably upgrade one of their guys, to defensive coordinator and keep going with what they had. I just think so many of us wanted, hey, we see the culture of a particular team in the NFL and their defense, and we want to replicate that. And with this, it's just so hard to know actually what it could look like. But I guess we'll just kind of move forward with that. I know he plays some more press man coverage, which everybody wants more of that, it feels like, in Green Bay land. So we'll just kind of see how it goes. You guys have any last comments before we move?
I just think the key, we don't have to be an elite defense. We just have to be a consistent defense, which we haven't been in a long time. So if he can come in and get guys to play up to their ability and consistently give up 20, 25 points a game or less, I feel like that keeps us in the game. I think the struggles the last however many years has just been you never knew which team was going to show up. So if we can get some consistency on that side of the ball, I think our offense is good enough to carry us enough to win more games.
Yeah. Well, and I think just having 18 turnovers, you force 18 turnovers the whole year. I think 3 of those were in Detroit that one game. So I'm hoping that at least we see some more aggression, a lot more disguise. Feels like players just aren't being coached super well all the time. So yeah, we'll see how it rolls here. Let's move to the championship games. Lions lose to the 49ers 34-31. Chris is right again. And the Chiefs beat the Ravens 17-10, which Chris was also right again. It's kind of annoying. But what was surprising to you guys about the games? We'll start with that. What was surprising?
Yeah, just going through each game real quick. Ravens, Chiefs. Extremely surprised the Ravens abandoned the run game early on in that game. Did not feed Gus Edwards. Did not get anything going on the ground. You know, they've great 3 capable running backs there, and with Lamar, and they just didn't seem to get the run game going. I know Casey shut it down early, but it seemed like they abandoned it pretty early. And then really choked. I mean, at the end of the day, some really I think bad, in terms of like mental football plays with personal fouls, etc. Zay Flowers with the fumble at the goal line there. I think the Ravens in many ways probably should have been able to make that a last possession game there. I think the Ravens are really going to be kicking themselves for that one at their home field there. And then Detroit, I think we could go in many directions with Detroit, and analyzing Dan Campbell's coaching decisions over and over again. All the opportunities to kick field goals that he didn't take. I know we were all going back and forth on that last drive there, running the ball, calling a crucial timeout that you simply can't call that timeout. Just football mind there. You cannot call a timeout. Basically, totally relying on that onside kick, to happen to try to be in the game. So, yeah, some head scratching plays by Detroit. Once again, I think they, even more than Baltimore, really gave that game away in many ways. I give Brock Purdy a little credit. I get over 50 yards rushing on the ground. I made some plays with his feet there. And I think their team in general made some plays that they had to, but I think it was more so Detroit just melting down, just a really colossal collapse. I know there's a lot of talk that they'll be back next year, but yeah, just kind of a brutal stain for the NFC North. Back-to-back weeks, just watching these good teams just collapse in Santa Clara, and I think that's my obvious pick for the Super Bowl. I do not think San Fran is going to do so hot in the Super Bowl. Seems like people kind of gave it to him this year around.
Yeah, I would say what stood out to me was that experience mattered. Like at the end of the day, when you look at the Chiefs and you look at the 49ers, those are the 2 teams that came in with the most experience, and they didn't make those crucial mistakes that Brian's talking about. Lamar, I mean, it was kind of a big stage for him, right? Like he got to the championship game. I feel like that was a big step. But like Brian said, they abandoned the run game, which I don't understand why they did that. But putting a game in Lamar's hands is concerning because that's just not his game. And the Chiefs did a good job of taking away his legs. And when you're relying on him dropping back and making throws, like to me, he's an average quarterback at that point. I was surprised that it was such a low-scoring game. I expected it to be a little more of a shootout, but that Chiefs defense it's still underrated, which makes no sense to me. But they just made a huge difference in that game. In terms of the 49er game, he's a clutch quarterback. Like he's not. What I was surprised about was the 49ers came out flat, especially after what happened with the Packers. I thought they'd be a lot more focused and come in, and I honestly thought they'd win bigger. So that surprised me. But at the end of the day, they started feeding McCaffrey. They're giving the ball to Debo. Their defense in the second half was really good. Like they just didn't make mistakes in the second half. They made the big turnovers, and truthfully, Brock Purdy he's good enough to win big games like that, and he doesn't seem like he shies away from the moment. So interesting games. Like we'll probably get into the Lions stuff a little bit more, but Yeah, I thought the better teams won both games, which may not be the narrative that's officially out there.
Yeah, I mean, I could echo a lot of what you guys said. I think I'm surprised that Lamar choked. I am surprised that he played as badly as he did, and they got unlucky in ways, and bad things happen. But I really am surprised by that. I thought he would meet the moment, and then I am surprised that the Lions choked the way they did, because I don't think they had really done that all year. Um, they'd never been up big and completely collapsed, and it happened. It just straight up happened. Whether the moment was too big, or we'll kind of get into some of the decisions, but I was surprised that it happened, because I think in terms of skill position players, individual defensive players, the 49ers were better. I truly believe lines, defensive, offensive lines were better with the Lions. And I think that showed it a lot of parts of the game, but it ultimately kind of crashing down anyway. What did you like, or what was like, whether it's a play or whether it was a particular player, what kind of stood out in the more the positive way versus kind of more of the surprises?
Yeah, the new Belichick and Brady here with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. There's no doubt about it. I think Chris hit it on the head. Experience matters in these moments, and you can tell they've been there before. I think there's a lot of pundits right now saying the really impressive part about that second half is Patrick Mahomes turned into a game manager. Did not turn the ball over. Did not make really bad plays, or got rid of the ball or whatnot, or had it maybe ate it, took a sack when he had to, etc. And they just managed the game. And I think on the coaching end and on Mahomes' end, that just speaks to their experience and knowing the moment. And we just need to have more points in their team at the end of this game. We don't need to blow them out. We don't need to run the score up. We just need to manage the moment and win the game. And so I think that experience shines really, really bright in that moment. And I think you're looking at a duo here, which I know there are the comparisons are starting with Brady right now, but if they get their third here, I think they're gonna go down in history as quite the combination.
Yeah, what I liked was seeing, I mean, Travis Kelsey being healthy has been a game changer for them. But what I like to see overall, I mean, him included, is just their ability to catch the ball and get first downs and move the clock, because that was really their big issue all year, is the drops, the inconsistencies. Like, we've seen MVS make a couple plays the last few games. He wasn't making those plays this year. Just feels like they stepped up in the biggest moments, but that's also keyed around Isaiah Pacheco, who looks like he's always running 200 miles an hour. But he's been huge for them. Like Brian, like their drives on offense is what the Packers looked like those last couple weeks, where they're just like 7 minutes, 8 minutes, 7 minutes, and it like that can just really deflate an opponent. So I thought that was impressive. With the 49ers, it's that they didn't abandon the run like they did against the Packers. They stuck with it. They trusted their game plan, and that's what ultimately got them back in the game. Outside of obviously the Gibbs fumble was big, but they just didn't deviate from what I feel like they came in wanting to do.
Yeah, I think just there's individual performances, and I actually thought about the losing teams a little bit with this. Like Jahmyr Gibbs is incredible. It's so fun to watch him play, and it almost just feels like it's that 12th pick overall was justified, because he is definitely probably one of the top 10 players in that draft. And you can look at the analytics with running backs, and obviously short shelf life, et cetera, but it doesn't really matter, because ultimately he's that good. So I actually thought he played really well. Kyle Hamilton, safety for the Ravens. I mean, that one touchdown to Kelsey from Mahomes, it was just an incredible pass. It is perfect coverage. And it's a great catch. But what are you going to do? It's so fun to watch Kyle Hamilton play, because he always makes the tackle. He's always in the right position. And it feels like he's the smartest player on the field. And I wish the Packers could draft safeties like the Ravens do, because you go from Ed Reed to Kyle Hamilton. And they've had a couple in between, obviously, but he fell to them like 14th overall in that draft. He was like supposed to go top 10. I feel like these kind of players just follow the Ravens, and it's fun to watch them. It's just I think it's weird to say that Mahomes is still like underrated. Where you watch him against the Ravens, and he makes every right decision, every single right decision, and it's really cool to watch because I think at times with Tyreek Hill, it's like he wanted that long ball so much of the game, and he had so many receivers that could do that. And now it's just, hey, I'm gonna make this right play, and I'm gonna take the time in the pocket that I need, and I might even run through or to a couple different Ravens players and throw it over the top of them. It's so fun to watch him play the position. I think there's other things we could talk about. I do want to get to the Dan Campbell decisions because I think it's worth looking at them. And we don't need to go decision by decision here. It felt like we were all on the same page with what was going on, but there was a lot of discourse and debate on this. Do you think, I guess if you're Dan Campbell, what would you do differently? If you're going to change any of those decisions he made, especially the fourth down ones, what would you change and why would you do it?
I heard the take from Stephen A. that it's that I think it's third quarter still, if I'm correct. That drop pass by Josh Reynolds, and they're saying, well, justified, like if he catches the ball, like it was good play design, everything, good call, like he's just got to catch the ball. And I get that from execution standpoint, but we don't know. Maybe they go on and they fumble or they do something else after that. I think getting 3 points there, I've talked to enough people now, that's a momentum piece. You would have gone up, if you make that field goal, you go up 3 scores. And I think 27-10. And then really interesting on top of that is Nick Bosa was asked, what was the turning point of this game? And Nick Bosa goes on to say, when we stopped him on fourth down in the third quarter, it was 24-10, and we got our offense on the field and got going. And I believe that's where then, Ayuk gets this crazy, dramatic 50-yard bomb and off of a line defender and everything. And so I thought that was a critical point. And a lot of people are going to talk about that last drive or the drive before that where they could have tied it. But I think that was a critical piece where you make that, you're up 3 scores. Now, the kicker, Badgley, first name, forgetting Michael, maybe.
Yeah, it's Michael.
He was a practice squad guy coming in, I think, end of December, was signed officially. So I think we do have to have some context. And it's kind of concerning for the Lions. They didn't have a great kicker going into the postseason. So I think there is a lack of confidence there in their
Green Bay understands that. So.
We do understand that. So I think, everyone's it's so easy to sit back on our couch and analyze this and critique, but I do think that has to be something everyone takes into consideration. If you have Harrison, Butker, you have Tucker, to kick the ball here for you. Even Moody, I think the San Fran kicker. I think any of these other guys, you probably would have kicked the ball. But Detroit, just their kicking game was not there. And that's, I think, something to look at on their special teams. So,
I don't know if it would have mattered though. Because that's the thing. Like that's what the Lions always did, right? But maybe you are right? If they have Riley Patterson, is it different even? I don't know, or if it's a better kicker. But Chris, do you have any thoughts on that play?
I think being on the road and being the team that's probably not supposed to win, the idea of being up 3 possessions is huge. And I get that's not who they were all year. Dan Campbell went for it more than any other coach, and it just brings up the question. I was listening to one podcast this week of, do you coach differently in the playoffs? And that was kind of the debate back and forth. And I kept thinking through that in my head. Like, I think you do in some sense, to where you have, there are moments where you should take the points. And when you're up 14 and you can go up 3 possessions on the road, I think you should. Granted, they called the right play and it should have worked. And then it's a moot point because, like Brian said, you don't know what's going to happen after that. But the one that will always stick in my head is just that running play on third down with a minute to go. Because if you have all your timeouts and you score, you can stop them within 10 seconds using your timeouts, and you have 40 seconds to get down to the field and kick a field goal. So to me, that's what ultimately did it in. I have no issue with a team being aggressive, but it just felt like when you watch sports enough through your life, sometimes it just feels like the moment is too big for a team. Like, that's just what I felt with the Lions. Like, their moment was getting there, and they were this close, but then it started to creep into their head. And when you're on the road and the crowd's against you, like it just fell apart, and it was hard to watch.
I just want to build on to your point, Chris. Like, I agree. Like, right, like you maybe do coach differently, but then and we're talking about the third quarter, but I think this really started in the second quarter. They were I think they inside the 3-yard line right before the half, and they could have gone for it there. I thought they had momentum. They were moved the ball all the way down there, and I'm like, okay, if we're gonna kick field goals and we're gonna be different, then kick field goals this game. But I don't know. To me, it's kind of like I thought there was already a shift of like, oh, you're gonna kick now. Like, to me, that would have been a Dan Campbell. Like, okay, it's whatever. We're inside the 5. It's 4th down. We're up 21-7. Let's go up 28-7. Let's just let's bury them. And I thought that was a shift right there where I was like, what's going on here? And then it just seemed like they weren't confident in maybe that decision making going forward.
Well, to add on, I mean, you go up 3 scores at the end of the half, which I actually thought was the right call. But why wouldn't you do it then? Is it just too long of a field goal in your head? You're saying, well, it's 48 yards. I just think this 49ers defense is different. They have very good individual players in the middle of the field. Their secondary wasn't amazing, but they have very good players that make big plays when they need them to. And so I thought, hey, if you go up 3 scores, you in essence erase whatever field goal drive that the 49ers put up. And yeah, you're up 3 scores. And I just think that takes pressure off your defense, where if they make a mistake, it doesn't get in their head. And they didn't even necessarily make a mistake. They just got unlucky, but it doesn't matter. And I think to what your point, Chris, is, I think you do coach different, especially on the road, especially against particular teams. And I think this was the one team that I think you play a little bit different. Anything else you critique? I guess you talked about the 4th down run or the 3rd down run. I think Ben Johnson, he must think disguise. He must think nobody's going to see us running it here. We have 3 wide receivers in. But Montgomery, when he's in there, I think they run like 65% of the time.
That's what I was just going to say. If it was a disguise, they should have left Gibbs in, because you wouldn't be thinking it with that.
Yeah.
Kind of gave it away in my mind.
Yeah.
Kind of that theme there, Phil. Like, they almost like outthought themselves, it seems like at times. Like, almost like thinking you're the smartest person here. While I agree it was Lions football, I can't imagine any of the 31 other teams would have not kicked that field goal in that moment to tie the game. Like, I agree being aggressive. I agree, you're on the road maybe. But I think the logic there is tie the game. You may never get
4th down.
Yeah. You may never get a chance to tie this game again. Tie the game, extend the game. So.
Yeah,
I'd be curious what the analytics said. So what was going through my mind on that last drive was, at what point do you kick the field goal, conserve the time, you have your 3 timeouts, and then try to get a stop and have like a minute and a half left?
Right.
It's something that, like, when I played Madden, which is probably a really bad example I would always do that. I always just take the field goal with as much time as I can in hopes that I could get the ball back and be able to mount a drive on the back end. But what I want to ask is, like, where does analytics play into all this? Like, to me, that's kind of the fascinating discussion coming out of this weekend. Is like, Dan Campbell doesn't seem to me as a really big analytical guy. Feels like a go with my gut type of coach. But like, have we swung too far in professional sports with the analytics to where we've kind of taken some of this out? And it's really easy to second guess everything, but like, where does that fall into this whole discussion?
Well, analytics, I think they praise the Lions the most out of any football team. They say that Dan Campbell does it. In essence, yeah, it feels like he's a gut guy. But is he just following the analytics more? And it says, analytics says yes, that is following more. I think, analytics, this is a weird conversation. I think it's very different in baseball versus football. And I think it's harder to qualify in football than it is baseball. Because I think of all the different factors involved in a play. Because it's not just batter hitter. It's 22 men on the field all have different kind of roles or positions, offense and defense. Or Brian, what do you think?
I think you hit it, Phil. They're baseball. I think you're factoring in like all these different circumstances on the field there. Football, they're trying to like cut out this moment out of the context and say, well, this is what the math says to it, taking away like all the football nuance or the the culture of the game or the you're on the road or how your players are performing to the analytics and be like, okay, yes, analytics, but how is our team playing? What does our team need here? And I think you also said it, Chris, like I think Dan Campbell's irrational. I think he's just like plays with this like fire in his gut, and he's like, we're gonna do this. Like watching that like, late in the season, you watched Lions on the road at Dallas, that whole controversial like checking in 2-point conversion with the O lineman. He continued to go for it after they had multiple penalties. They're at the 10-yard line. And at that point, I was like, this dude doesn't care. This is just how he is going to coach. And to me, it defies logic at some point. And I think if he can somehow get it done some year by doing that, sure. But he will forever be ridiculed if this comes back to haunt him and he, has these moments where he just can't get it done because he's so stubborn in the moment that he has to go for it.
I don't think they get back there. I mean, that's just my gut. Like, I think it's better feeling being a Packers fan right now than it is a Lions fan. One, it's a way bigger choke. Two, they're going to have to pay Goff a lot of money here coming. And I just don't, and Ben Johnson will eventually leave. I don't think this is going to be the same team next year. They're not going to come out of nowhere. I don't think they're going to make it back. Chris, you brought up the analytics. You love baseball. You know a ton about baseball. They've obviously brought in fully into analytics. What's your thoughts with Dan Campbell? And I think the way that football's trending toward it.
I mean, my thought is you just can't have it both ways, right? Like, if like the analytics, what I've noticed, and I don't have any stats to back this up, but it feels like the analytics favor going for it more than not. And so to me as a fan, like I wouldn't be able to criticize my coach for going for it and it not working because in theory, that's what you would want. You want your team to be aggressive and go for it. And there's times when that's not the right move, and I think we understand that. But in terms of analytics and football, it's just really hard to say because a lot of it's situational. But I have a hard time criticizing any coach for going for it in a situation. Like Brian said, there was the irrational 2-point conversion where Dan Campbell he was frustrated and just decided to keep going for it. But, if it's 4th and 1, 4th and 2, 4th and 3, I would always lean go for it because that's just the type of person I am and I can live with the outcome. It just feels like going back to the question I asked earlier about or comment is being on the road. It just feels different in that situation to where I think that was the time, if you're going to revert back, like that would make the most sense to go up 3 scores and play your cards that direction.
We could keep dissecting this. I think we're all in agreement that it was the wrong decision, which is not what everybody thinks, which is kind of interesting. I don't think they get back, but obviously they're still going to be a good team in the North. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out through the next year or two here.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
I hate doing this as a Packer fan, but was this a bigger choke than the Packer-Seattle game? Because I've heard that comparison a lot this week. Like which one was worse, or are they just both equally as bad?
I've relived that recently. Packers-Seattle still goes down as the worst choke. I think of that Morgan Burnett interception, sliding, maybe should have ran to the end zone. 5 minutes left. I think it was like 16 to, I don't know what it was, 16 to 6 or something. It was something like that. And how we lost that game, the Bostic onside kick, it was like a fake field goal in there. Oh my goodness. Russell Wilson had a throw across the field, 2-point conversion. Everything like that'll never, I don't know what can beat that. I've even relived 4th and 26 if you go back to when we were even much younger.
Freddie Mitchell.
Yeah. That was pretty brutal, but that Seattle meltdown, the things that had to happen and in the succession they had to happen. Detroit was like more of this like slow melt, like a snowman, in the winter, just like slowly falling apart. We went up in flames in Seattle. So
Yeah, I think that one's worse. And I even had a Seattle fan, my father-in-law, text me, "Congratulations," after Morgan Burnett got the interception.
yeah,
I mean, so that just shows where we were in the game. I think we were still up 2 scores at that point. And I still don't know how we lost that game. But it's interesting people are making that comparison because I think the way the Lions did, yeah, it all happened really quickly when it got tied. But it also was still tied.
Mm-hmm.
And there was still a lot of game left. So I always think that will still be the worst one. And I don't even know if I'll experience that ever again because of how bad it was.
I'll just throw it out there though. If Michael Badgley, good old Michael Badgley, misses any of those field goals though, like he's gonna get questioned the other way. Well, why don't you go for it?
Yep.
You always go for it. So I mean, I totally agree with you, Phil. I don't think they get back. I think everyone's gonna have their number. They're gonna have a target on their back coming up here. But I think I think you're gonna get it from both sides no matter what you do on Dan's end.
Well, hey, we'll table this conversation. I could always keep talking NFL. We were going to bring up a hypothetical the next question, but we'll save that to next week for time's sake, and I think we'll give some time to kind of stew on it as a teaser. We'll talk about next week. Who do we think gets to a Super Bowl first, Josh Allen or Lamar? Let's shift gears a little bit. Let's go to Badger basketball. Chris is wearing his Bucky sweatshirt there, looking good. Under Armour, great company. We saw them beat Michigan State on Friday fairly handedly. It feels like Michigan State made a couple runs. Again, I think we went on one of our first droughts we've had in a while. I think it was like 5 minutes. What's your reaction to the game, Chris? I think you were there. What did you like? What did you not? Speak to it.
The efficiency was really good again, offensively. I just appreciate this year that although we're not as good defensively, and I've acknowledged that the last couple weeks, like offensively, guard is letting them do their thing and be a little more up tempo and take shots that maybe in the past years it's something that he would pull a guy for. But you can just feel the players feeding off of that. And they're such a momentum team. And when they get hot, they're really scary. Like I loved AJ Store's aggressiveness. Even Tom Izzo said he's one of the best players he's ever seen, which is really high praise, obviously coming from him. But just as a team, the one thing that I'll say stands out to me is Kamari McGee getting hurt might be one of the best things that happen because it's going to allow Connor Essegian to play more, and he's starting to heat up. And that could be a weapon that you need down the stretch in a game when you need a 3 or just a big bucket. But the other thing I'll say is Stephen Crowell is just a brand new guy this year. We're gonna talk about it. He's gonna face Edie on Sunday, and I have pretty high confidence that he can kind of beat and bang with him and be okay. Like, I don't know. There's just not a lot of weaknesses on this team, which is exciting. And even a guy that can't shoot like Carter Gilmore knows his role and does it well. So it's very different than it's the best team we've had since the national championship team. Like I don't think there's a debate on that at this point.
Yeah, I mean, Tar Heels, Volunteers both losing, I think last night. So yeah, where do we move up in the rankings here? I mean, you're looking at a top 5 team right now in the country. Great to see AJ Storrs seize the moment and have a big game like that. Come tournament time, you want to have your star shine. So I think the more you can see that, getting praise like that, like Chris said, from Izzo is huge. So I think a lot of good pieces moving forward. I think great momentum. Edie inside is going to be really tough, and they have great perimeter shooting. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see, Purdue hangs the points. So I'm going to see if we can hang with them. I think that'd be really, really exciting. But yeah, I mean, you're looking at, could Bucky get at a minimum might be a 2 seed in the bracket here. So I mean, I think really high expectations for this team, and hopefully they keep it rolling.
Yeah, I think our defense actually could get better. I think sometimes they cheat, especially for as good as I'm blanking on our point guard's name. Why am I blanking? Chucky Hepburn. For as good as a defender he is, sometimes he cheats. He tries to get steals that can backfire. So yeah, sometimes we get caught on screens and the help isn't perfect. I actually think that could get better. When we did have a scoring drought, I think it's just because they stopped playing their offense and they were taking threes. And it's not that they weren't open threes even, but they stopped putting inside. And it feels like if they get post touches at all, that Wall or Crowell make the right decision 95% of the time. And it's really fun to watch because it just feels like Crowell always knows when to pass it. Wall always knows how to back his defender in and make the right move off of it. It is really fun to watch. And yeah, I think you're right. Best team that we've had since our national title game team. And it's going to be fun to see what they do. And yeah, like you said, I didn't even hear that Izzo press conference. For him to say that Storr is one of the best players he's seen, I mean, yeah, highest praise you can get. And he can only get better, especially his decision-making could only get better. So it's pretty exciting to see him in a Bucky uniform. We have a game tomorrow, Nebraska, Purdue on Sunday. What are your predictions for each of those games?
I will say it's easy to say going to Nebraska is a trap game, but I think they're so good at home that this is not something we're going to overlook in any way. I mean, obviously playing them a couple weeks ago, we shot so well that game. I don't anticipate that again. So I think we're going to have to win a close one at Nebraska. I do think we will, which is surprising because that's a tough place to play. But Purdue is obviously the big one on the calendar. It's at home. I don't anticipate us shying away from the moment. Like you said, we're such a veteran team that it's one of those teams that, like you said, that drought. We used to talk about droughts all the time. Like those droughts just don't happen. And if we can just stay in the fight against Purdue, like I don't see any reason we can't leave this week 2-0. We just can't go 0-2. I think that's really the only thing that's on my mind. Of like worst case scenario, we go 1-1.
Yeah, Cornhuskers coming off a bad Maryland loss. I think 20-point loss there. So I think this is our window, this is our opportunity. Like Chris said, I think normally be a trap game. Normally, I think I say we lose here. I like us going into Nebraska winning. I can't quite see us beating Purdue. I just think they're too stacked, too loaded. But then you got 2 games on the road, Michigan, Rutgers. I think should be winnable games without much of a doubt there. So yeah, I can see us going 3-1 in the next 4 games.
Yeah, for whatever reason, I feel pessimistic. I think that Nebraska game, it didn't feel fluky, but we shot so well against them. I think we shot like 65% of the first half. We might have shot like 55% of the second. I think Nebraska beats us, but it's probably close. I just love Tominaga. Maybe I just love Tominaga.
He's awesome.
He's like an Asian Steph Curry. I actually think he could make the NBA because he has all the same traits. I can't compare anybody to Steph Curry, especially
his release is insanely quick.
Oh, it's yeah. And yeah, it's cool to see actually Nebraska be okay. I never want to see Minnesota be good. I never want to see Michigan be good. But Nebraska, like, it's kind of fun to watch. It's kind of cool. I think all your analysis on the Purdue game is right. I think Crowell can handle Edey. I think Edey will get his points, and I'm curious if we're going to try to double, triple team him. I don't know what we're going to do. If we're going to play any different, or if we're going to let Crowell kind of play him one-on-one and let Edey get 20. You know, if he gets 20, I don't think it actually affects us. If he gets 30, does that affect us? You know, and so, I actually think we probably beat Purdue, but we don't beat Nebraska, which, you know, is the opposite of you, Brian. And I think just playing on the road in the Big Ten is so difficult. I mean, we lost to Penn State on the road, and they went crazy for one game, right? Especially their guard play. So I think Nebraska will come for revenge, and then we'll kind of refocus against Purdue. Let's transition. I think, a really good week of college basketball. There's a ton of good games this weekend, so that'll be fun to watch. Let's get to the kind of our last part of the show, playoff fantasy football update. Chris, what were the standings of the 4 teams? If you know off the top of your head, even if you know who got in, who didn't.
Well, I know that Parker. I said last week, I'm just on a roll. I said last week I wanted him to win. He won the week. Austin got second, which I don't know if you guys know him, but interesting nugget is he was the last team to advance all 3 rounds. Just survive and advance. And Frem, you missed out. You finished 3rd, and Elliot finished 4th. He just didn't have a good week. But Frem, let's hear it, man.
I missed my 3 points. I look back. I took the Mahomes Kelsey package. Probably the wrong move there, as I think he was maybe the lowest performing quarterback even of the week. But yeah, I mean, looked at all the different angles. I was checking the scores, and I think it was like the late Goff touchdown actually. I think sealed it and burned me there at the end. I think he had Goff, and he doesn't get that touchdown, and then even McCaffrey had one. He ran it down, I think, like the one, and then Elijah Mitchell ran it in. So I had McCaffrey that could have easily scored there. So a lot of things could have happened differently. Very close. I was right on the doorstep, 3 points away. So sometimes you just are unlucky. So I think Austin even said in the chat he just had luck on his side.
So if Dan Campbell kicks those field goals,
yes,
that touchdown probably doesn't happen.
Probably.
So Dan Campbell's why you lost. So,
send him the bill.
Parker and Austin, who do we predict is going to win?
Well, Parker's got first pick. He's going to get McCaffrey. Frem and I were in the championship last year, and it made for some interesting strategy. Like, do you just stack one team? Do you try to mix it up? I think that'll be the debate those two have. But starting with McCaffrey is going to be an advantage in my mind.
Yeah, I think Austin needs to take Kelsey and that number 2 pick. If he doesn't take Kelsey, I don't think it's going to go well for him. I think if he probably takes... I don't even know the way Mahomes hasn't put up fantasy points. So I think you kind of punt on the QB position.
He probably has to go Pacheco, because otherwise Parker could end up with McCaffrey and Pacheco, and Austin's stuck with CEH.
Yeah. Could he go Kelsey, Pacheco? 1-2 there?
Probably.
That makes sense to me.
I've never gotten to the championship round. I can only imagine what it feels like, just ecstasy. But, I didn't even think about that strategy. Because, he almost has to draft Pacheco. I'm hoping Parker wins it just because I know him. I don't know Austin.
I do too.
He is a survivor, though. And I also am a survivor. I know what that's like. So, Chris,
hey,
thank
Phil,
you for... Yeah.
What does the survivor champion get in our league?
They get Destiny's Child. What's the CD called?
Survivor.
It's called Survivor. I think that was me and you that came up with that, right, Chris?
Mm-hmm. eBay came through for us.
It's one of the few times it's come through for us. Thank you so much for listening. We will at some point get Instagram, Twitter /X account. You can maybe ask us questions if you want to know more about us, or you want us to talk about a particular topic within Wisconsin or NFL stuff. Thank you for your time tonight. Chris, Brian, it's been a pleasure. We will see you guys all next week on the Man Sports Fan podcast. Thank you.